All right, hey guys, welcome to the video. If you're new here, my name's Curtis, and today we're gonna be talking about one of my favorite notes in perfumery, vetiver. Do you guys like the note of vetiver? For me, I absolutely love it. It was a note that I was attracted to from the very beginning of my fragrance journey. And one thing that I love about vetiver is the many facets that it has. And this depends a lot on, where it's cultivated. Vetiver does come from India, but it is also cultivated in other parts of the world, from like Haiti, other parts of like Southeast Asia. But yeah, it's a phenomenal note. And depending on the way it's used in perfumery, it can really take you on a journey. And like I said, it just has so many different facets. I mean, it can come off fresh, clean, green, damp, earthy, humid, a bit smoky, very woody. Yeah, it's just a lovely, lovely fragrance note. And so yeah, I'm excited to talk about some of these vetiver fragrances that I have to show you today. So if you're curious to hear my thoughts and opinions on these fragrances, then let's go. First up, from the house of Laboratorio or Fativo, we have Vetyverso. All right, so this one is quite an intriguing take on vetiver. It is quite fresh and spicy in the opening. And then, when you start to push forward into the dry down, it deepens and becomes, quite green and earthy. But in terms of like vetiver fragrances, vetiver is quite a polarizing note to, I think, many people. For me, I love it. And, it's not polarizing at all for me, but I do understand that for other people, it can come off that way. But I would say in terms of vetiver fragrances in my collection, this is probably one that tends to go off a bit easier. People tend to receive this vetiver fragrance and they tend to enjoy the smell of this one. So, I would say, if you're someone who's just starting to get into the note of vetiver and, you want to give a good impression, this is definitely a great one to go with. Also, Laboratorio or Fativo is such an underrated house in my opinion. Not a whole lot of people talk about this house, but they have some amazing fragrances in their lineup. And Vetyverso is definitely one of my favorites. But yeah, they're definitely an underrated house, one to check out. And like I said, if you're someone who's just trying to dive into the note of vetiver, maybe your nose isn't quite accustomed to the note of vetiver, then this is a great place to start. But this is a lovely one and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Vetyverso by Laboratorio or Fativo. Next up, from the house of Mos Milano, we have Hemingway. All right, so this is quite a heavy slap of vetiver in your face. And if you were looking at, vetiver forward fragrances, I would say that Hemingway is a bit more vetiver forward than Vetyverso. And this one kind of, when I smell this is very green, woody, has a slight dampness to it. Like, I feel like the vetiver is a bit wet in here, but it also has like a fresh brightness to it that I really, really enjoy. But this is a lovely wear for sure. But like I said, it is quite vetiver dominant. But yeah, one thing that I really love about the house of Mos Milano, and this is another house that I feel like is quite underrated. You don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about this house, but they have some phenomenal fragrances. They have another one called Russian Tea. If you're looking for a tea-based scent, that is gorgeous. But yeah, this one, again, is quite an underrated vetiver fragrance in my opinion. Now, I would say this one does face a bit of criticism for its, lackluster performance for many people. But for me, I get a moderate sillage and a moderate projection. And I would say the longevity is moderate or so. I get about 6 hours of longevity with this one, but that's good enough for me. But I would say in terms of the wearing experience, it's a gorgeous one. This is a very well done, beautifully constructed vetiver fragrance. But like I said, it is quite vetiver forward. So maybe, if you are diving into the note of vetiver, maybe this isn't one to start out with. There are probably, easier options to kind of work your way in. But this is a gorgeous vetiver fragrance and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Hemingway by Mos Milano. Next up, from the house of Javoy, we have Incident, Diplomatique. Man, this is such a gorgeous vetiver and also patchouli dominant fragrance. So basically you have vetiver and patchouli kind of battling out the whole time throughout the wearing experience of this fragrance. And then the deep dry down, the vetiver kind of pushes slightly ahead. So I think for some people, you know, maybe the wearing experience is different and some people might consider this more of a patchouli forward fragrance. But for me and my wearing experience and how this comes off my skin, the vetiver tends to dominate. So I absolutely love the wearing experience of this. And what I also, you know, find very unique about this particular fragrance is that this is a citrusy vetiver fragrance, and the citruses in this fragrance last basically throughout the life of this fragrance on my skin, which is impressive because, you know, as you guys know, citrus in a lot of fragrance, that tends to fade fairly quickly, but for some reason it lingers in this fragrance, and I absolutely love the smell of it. And one thing about this vetiver fragrance too, the vetiver in this fragrance in the deep dry down becomes kind of ashy and smoky. And for me, that took me a little bit to kind of, you know, get my nose accustomed to. And I wasn't too keen on the dry down when I first, you know, got into this fragrance, but over time I really began to appreciate it, and actually I absolutely love it now, and I look forward to the deep dry down of this fragrance for that experience. But this is a beautiful fragrance, and one thing that I have to say about this is a little goes a long way. This is a beastly performer, not only in its projection but sillage as well. I mean, this is a room filler. So, you know, like I said, less is more, a little goes a long way. I do like 1 or 2 sprays with this one and it lasts me the entire day. And, you know, sometimes 2 sprays can be a little bit much. So 1 spray works a treat. But yeah, this is a lovely one and definitely one to check out from the House of Javoy. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Incident Diplomatique by Javoy. Next up from the House of Toba, we have Ombre Vert. All right, so this is a fragrance house from Hong Kong. And, you know, as you guys know, I live here in Japan, so I really enjoy introducing fragrances that might be a bit unknown that are coming out of Asia. And I feel like, especially in recent years, like Asia has had a lot of great perfume brands that have released that aren't necessarily known to like places like in America, just because they haven't necessarily made it that far west. But this is a house that's definitely on my radar, and I have sampled quite a few perfumes from this house, and it is definitely a house that has me intrigued. I have my eye on this house for sure. But when I went to Shinjuku one day to Isetan, and they had this brand there, and this is the one that I was really drawn to. This is a gorgeous citrusy woody take on vetiver, and when I first smelled this one slightly reminded me of Incident Diplomatique by Javoy, because it does have that burst of citruses in the top. The dry down does become quite woody, a bit smoky. There's even a slight leathery presence here, but man, this is a very gorgeous wear. I would say in terms of its performance, it's a moderate sillage, moderate projection, but you know, this is a perfect fragrance that, you know, again, this is one that I would check out if you're someone who is just starting to get into vetiver. You know, it's maybe not as challenging as like a fragrance like Incident Diplomatique or Hemingway, but I feel like this has the likability factor is there for the people that not only that you're going to be around, but I think probably also for yourself if your nose isn't that accustomed to the note of vetiver. You know, but don't get me wrong, there is a strong push of vetiver in this fragrance. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's very subjective in that regard, but this is a lovely one and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Ombre Vert by Toba. And finally, from the House of Nishan, we have Sultan Vetiver. All right, yeah, so you guys know this is the king of kings. Sultan basically means king, and that is extremely true. This is my favorite vetiver fragrance, like vetiver dominant vetiver forward fragrance in my collection. This is a slap of vetiver in your face. There's 4 kind of vetivers in here. And the one thing that I really, really love about this fragrance takes you on a journey from beginning to end. 4 different types of vetiver. So it's taking you through all the different facets that vetiver has to offer. This is a masterpiece vetiver fragrance in my opinion. Now, like I said, and I just want to let you guys know, this is a masterpiece for me. I love the note of vetiver. If you're just starting to get into the note of vetiver, do not start with this fragrance. Chances are you probably won't like it. This, like I said, it's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece created by Jorge Lee. Jorge Lee is one of those perfumers who, especially in the beginning of Nishan's journey, he created a lot of their fragrances. And if you look at their back catalog, you'll just see Jorge Lee, Jorge Lee, Jorge Lee. I would say more of their recent releases, you don't really see him perfuming for Nishan so much. I'm not sure what happened, if there was a falling out or if, they just wanted to, start working with other perfumers. But yeah, he does absolutely masterful work. And right here is the perfect example of that. But yeah, this is a very, this vetiver is very grassy, green, earthy. It has some dampness to it. It might even come off like slightly moldy, but at the same time, there's some, I think there's some neroli in here, which off my skin upon initial spray, it's almost giving like this soapy like quality. Then in the deep dry down of this fragrance, you get some leathery facets that start to push forward, but I would say those don't necessarily take over the vetiver. The vetiver remains extremely dominant in this fragrance from beginning to end. But yeah, this is a masterpiece and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Sultan Vetiver by Nishan. All right guys, so that's all I have for you for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's content. And let me know down in the comment section, do you enjoy the note of vetiver? Let me know some of your favorites. Well, I hope you guys are staying healthy and well, and I'll see you in the next video.